Thank you for choosing to watch this video. I want to keep these videos short and sweet, so there will be multiple parts to this question due to the amount of data that we will be working through. With that being said, remember to press the like button and enjoy the video. Have you ever been talking with someone about God when they make the claim that there is no evidence for God? Now, before we dive into the plethora of answers to this question, I first want to make it clear that when someone makes a truth claim, such as, there is no evidence that God exists, it is not your job to refute their claim, but instead it is their job to support their claim. The burden of proof is on the person who makes the claim. While keeping this in mind, your next step would be to ask them 3 questions about their claim. The first question is, what do you mean by that? Essentially, you want them to clarify their position and any nuances or underlying assumptions that may be present within their statement. Therefore, after someone says that there is no evidence for the existence of God, we should say, what do you mean by that? What do you mean that there is no evidence for God's existence? This will allow them to clarify what they mean by evidence and what they mean by God. Secondly, the question we should ask is, how did you come to that conclusion? By asking them this question, we want to know what evidence they have that disproves God's existence. We want to know their source regarding who told them that, or what authority led them to believe that God doesn't exist. Most of the time, I find that people do not have any good evidence for their positions, and instead it's just their opinion. If that is the case, and it is just their opinion, why should I pay any attention to an opinion that is not supported by evidence? In other instances, sometimes someone will simply repeat a slogan or a saying that they heard someone in authority say, such as a well-known atheist who says that there is no evidence that God exists. Remember, they have not given any support for that truth claim. Instead, they are asserting a position without evidence, which is the exact thing that they are criticizing you for, because they may think that you believe in God without any evidence. But, as they will soon find out, they are mistaken. The last question you would want to ask them would be, have you ever considered that there is good evidence for the existence of God? Or, if I can provide you with evidence, would you then agree that there is evidence? This can be tricky because they do not need to agree with the evidence or be convinced by the evidence for there to be actual evidence for God's existence. So please remember to not let the other person's own psychology dictate what is and what is not evidence. Now, let's quickly review what we have learned so far. After someone makes a truth claim, it is their job to support their claim and not your job to refute it. While keeping this in mind, you would ask the following 3 questions. Number 1, what do you mean by that? Number 2, how did you come to that conclusion? And number 3, have you ever considered? Before you start to answer their objection, use these 3 questions, which are crucial for you to ask because the first question clarifies, the second question shows where they got their perspective from, and the last question allows you to pivot them to another perspective. These questions are broken down into more detail in a book called Tactics by Greg Koukl, and his other book named Street Smarts, where he will teach you about the Columbo tactic in a very pragmatic way so you can use it in your everyday conversations. The Columbo tactic, when done correctly, will also prevent your conversations from evolving into screaming matches, emotional outbursts, and personal attacks. However, now let's dig into the meat of this question by actually laying out the evidence for God, which should come after we ask the person the 3 questions we just learned about. When someone claims that there is no evidence for God, or when they ask a derivative of that question, feel free to use their own worldview against them. For instance, let's use science and atheists against the claim that there is no evidence for the existence of God. I like to use logic, math, probability, and science to demonstrate my point. As an example, let's make a prediction using nature in the form of DNA. Bill Gates, who is a business and computer guru, has mentioned that DNA is akin to a computer program, but it is far more complex than even the most advanced software program from the largest software corporation. Bill Gates, who was the former CEO and co-founder of Microsoft, is saying that DNA has greater intricacies than even the most elaborate software codes. To further this point, Francis Crick, who was a British molecular biologist and one of the two scientists who discovered DNA, was astounded by the complexity of DNA, which led him to calculate the odds of DNA coming into existence by chance if you had all of the chemicals, energy, and materials that are needed to produce intelligent life on Earth. Crick estimates the odds that intelligent life exists on the Earth as the result of non-directed chance to be around 1 in 10 to the 2 billionth power. To put that massive number into perspective, any number above 1 times 10 to the 82nd power is close to impossible, considering that number represents the approximate number of atoms that are in the known universe. Clearly, 1 in 10 to the 2 billionth power is leagues greater than 1 times 10 to the 82nd. But how does this point to God? If I am predicting that God is the best explanation for this, I am using probability to show that this was likely designed, and how it is unlikely that it was created by chance. On the other hand, the person who asked the question is assuming that 1 out of 1 times 10 to the 2 billionth power are good odds, when in reality the numbers speak against them. To bring this back down to earth, let's say you and I are making a bet, and I have a 1 out of 10 chance of winning, and you have a 9 out of 10 chance of winning. Who has the better odds here? Clearly the odds are in your favor, and I would be foolish to bet that I am right. Now let's take the number out further. The odds of me losing the bet are 1 out of 100, while you have a 99 out of 100 or a 99% chance of winning. Again, I would be foolish to bet my money. But what if the numbers were even larger, to where I am betting 1 out of 1,000, or 1 out of 1,000,000, or 1 out of 1,000,000,000? When we inflate the numbers to a number such as 1 out of 1 times 10 to the 2 billionth, which is a number that we cannot compare to anything else but other numbers, the odds are not in favor of the person who thinks that this is a rational position to hold, betting on chance and not design. However, I have said this number gets us close to impossibility, but now let's make it truly impossible. First off, chance is not a cause. It is simply a word that indicates probability, but chance itself is not a cause. So clearly, chance could not cause DNA, let alone life. Secondly, in our estimates, we assumed that chemicals, energy, and matter were readily available for these reactions to occur to make DNA by chance. But without a designer, we would not even have the chemicals, energy, or matter to make the DNA to begin with, which would make DNA and life impossible, regardless of how much time we assume. In other videos, I will go more in depth about the creation of the world, and in another video, I will demonstrate that we have numbers substantially larger than 1 in 10 to the 2 billionth power, which points to a personal creator of the universe.